Three brothers grew up in the same house, same parents, same kitchen, same rice, same bread, same fish, same vegetables, same tea in the morning, same dinner table at night. If one of them ate mango after lunch, the other two probably did too. If one of them had rice at dinner, the other two were scooping from the same pot. For decades, their lives looked metabolically identical from the outside. And yet, when they finally went for a health checkup together, the results looked like they belonged to three completely different families. The oldest brother had normal blood sugar, the middle brother was pre-diabetic and had no idea, and the youngest already had full type 2 diabetes quietly affecting his kidneys, and he felt completely fine. That is the part that unsettles people. Not because three brothers got different lab results, because they were living what most people think should have produced the same outcome. Same meals, same home, same kitchen, same habits. So how could one body stay normal, one drift into danger, and one cross the line into full disease? Their doctor did not begin by blaming rice. He did not say, carbohydrates are the enemy. He did not give a dramatic speech about sugar like it was the only villain in the room. He asked one question. What are you eating with it, in what order, and when? That question changed everything. Because this is the truth almost nobody explains clearly enough. The food on your plate is only half the story. The other half is what that food does after it disappears into your body. How fast it becomes glucose. How hard it forces your pancreas to work. How sharply it raises insulin. Whether your liver helps control the wave or quietly makes it worse. Whether your cells respond properly or begin resisting the very hormone meant to protect you. Whether the meal fuels you or slowly wears down the system that was supposed to handle it. I'm Dr. Adrian. And after years of watching people get told they were mostly fine while their metabolism was quietly moving in the wrong direction, I need to tell you something very plainly. Type 2 diabetes usually does not arrive dramatically. It arrives quietly. It arrives through tired afternoons, through sugar cravings that make no sense, through brain fog after meals, through the feeling that you are heavier, slower, duller, and less clear than you used to be. It arrives through a little belly fat, a little more thirst, a little more fatigue, a little more dependence on snacks, a little more irritability when meals are delayed, things people call age, or stress, or bad sleep. Meanwhile, your blood vessels may already be paying for it. Your nerves may already be paying for it. Your kidneys may already be paying for it. And the pancreas, the organ trying to keep everything stable, may already be working far harder than it was ever meant to for far longer than it should. That is why this conversation matters. Because the answer is not always another pill. Not always a supplement with a shiny label and empty promises. Not always some extreme diet that nobody can maintain for more than 10 days. Sometimes the answer is simpler. Sometimes the answer is already sitting in grocery stores, produce markets, and kitchen shelves, ignored because it looks too ordinary to matter. Today, I'm going to show you 6 ingredients that can genuinely help slow glucose absorption, support insulin sensitivity, reduce pancreatic stress, and make your meals metabolically safer. Not magical ingredients. Not miracle cures. Real ingredients. Ranked from least effective to most powerful. And I need you to stay with me until number 1. Because number 1 is the ingredient almost everybody has seen, many people have cooked with, and very few truly understand. Before I give you the 6 ingredients though, you need to understand what actually goes wrong inside the body. Because once you understand that, everything changes. This stops being, eat this, avoid that advice, and it becomes a map. A map of what your body is trying to do every single time you eat. Here is the simplest way to think about it. Every time you eat carbohydrates, rice, bread, roti, pasta, potatoes, fruit, sweets, even so-called healthy carbohydrates, your digestive system begins breaking them down into glucose. That glucose enters your bloodstream. Your blood sugar rises. That rise is normal. That by itself is not diabetes. That is how the body gets fuel. The problem is not that glucose rises. The problem is how fast it rises, how high it rises, how often it rises, and how brutally your body has to work to bring it back down. That is where the pancreas enters the story. The pancreas detects rising glucose and releases insulin. And insulin's job is to act like a signal, a command, a traffic controller. It tells glucose where to go, into muscle, into the liver, into tissues that can use it or store it safely. When that signal works well, blood sugar comes down smoothly. The system is elegant. Beautiful, really. The body was built brilliantly. But then 2 things begin to go wrong, and almost nobody feels them clearly while they are happening. The first problem is speed. Some meals break down too quickly. They hit the bloodstream like a flood. White rice eaten alone, bread with sweet tea, cereal with juice, fruit juice without fiber, pasta without enough protein or fat, a carb-heavy breakfast on an empty stomach. That flood forces the pancreas to release a large burst of insulin just to keep up. Now imagine doing that once in a while. Not ideal, but manageable. Now imagine doing it every day. Breakfast, lunch, snacks, dinner, dessert, for years. The pancreas keeps answering the emergency, but every emergency costs something. That is stage 1. Then comes stage 2, the more dangerous one. Your cells stop responding to insulin as efficiently as they used to. This is insulin resistance, and the easiest way to understand it is to imagine insulin as a key and your cells as locks. At first, the key works beautifully. Then, over time, after repeated glucose floods, repeated insulin surges, inflammation, poor sleep, inactivity, fat accumulation, stress, and liver congestion, the lock gets rusty. The key is still there, the signal is still being sent, but the cell no longer opens as easily, so glucose stays in the blood longer. The pancreas responds the only way it knows how. It releases more insulin, then more again, and for a while, this works. That is what makes the problem so deceptive. Blood sugar can stay not terrible for years, while insulin is already running abnormally high behind the scenes. That means a person can look functional while their metabolic system is already under pressure. Then, slowly, the pancreas starts losing ground. The beta cells, the cells that make insulin, begin to tire. They do not fail all at once. They wear down, quietly, just like everything else in this disease. And once they can no longer keep up, blood sugar rises more permanently. That is when a person finally gets told they have prediabetes or diabetes. And by then, the process may have been building for years. That is why I want you to hear this clearly. Prediabetes is not almost nothing. It is not a harmless waiting room. It is a signal that the system is already under strain. And if no one intervenes intelligently, consistently, and early enough, the rest of the story often writes itself. Now here is where food becomes powerful, because the right ingredients can help in 3 specific ways. First, they can slow how fast glucose enters the blood. Second, they can help your cells respond better to insulin. Third, they can help protect the pancreas from oxidative stress and long-term exhaustion. Every ingredient on this list helps with at least one of those pathways. Some help with all 3. That is what makes them different from random, healthy foods people recommend because they sound traditional or impressive. These are not on the list because your grandmother used them. They are on the list because the mechanisms matter. So let's begin. Ingredient number 6. Fenugreek seeds. If there is one ingredient on this list that works like a mechanical slowing device inside digestion, it is fenugreek. Most people know fenugreek as a spice, a flavor, something that belongs in a curry or traditional dish. But metabolically, fenugreek is doing much more than adding taste. It contains a soluble fiber called galactomannan, and that matters because soluble fiber can change the speed of a meal. When fenugreek is soaked and then consumed, that fiber absorbs water and forms a gel-like substance inside the digestive tract. That gel slows contact between digestive enzymes and carbohydrates, so the starches and sugars in your meal break down more gradually, which means glucose enters your blood more slowly, which means your pancreas does not have to react like the building is on fire. That is the first reason fenugreek matters. It takes a meal that would have hit like a wave and turns it into something calmer, something less violent, something your body can handle with less panic. But fenugreek does not stop there. It also contains compounds that appear to support insulin release when glucose is elevated. That is important, because now it is not just slowing the flood, it is helping the response become more efficient once the flood begins. And fenugreek also slows gastric emptying. That means food leaves the stomach more gradually. That matters because a slower stomach often means a slower blood sugar rise. And when the rise is slower, the crash later is softer too. I once had a man in his late 60s tell me that the biggest change he noticed after using soaked fenugreek consistently was not his lab work at first. It was his afternoons. He said, "I stopped feeling like I wanted to sleep after breakfast." That sentence matters, because a lot of people do not realize their after-breakfast crash is not laziness. It is unstable glucose. It is a meal that hit too fast, an insulin surge that hit too hard, and energy that dropped too sharply after. When an ingredient can reduce the violence of that cycle, the person feels it before they ever see a number improve. That is why fenugreek deserves to be here, not as a miracle, as a stabilizer. The best way to use it is simple. Soak 1 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in water overnight. In the morning, drink the soaking water and eat the softened seeds before breakfast. Not occasionally, consistently. That is what gives it value. Now ingredient number 5. Jasmine seed powder, also known as black plum seed powder. This is one of the most overlooked ingredients in the whole list because the fruit gets the attention and the seed gets thrown away. That is unfortunate, because the seed is where much of the metabolic intelligence lives. Jasmine seed works early in digestion. Before starch can become a glucose problem, your body has to break it down. And to do that, it uses enzymes such as alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase. Jasmine seed compounds help slow those enzymes down. That means starch turns into glucose more gradually. And when that conversion slows, the spike after a meal softens. That matters more than most people realize. Because for many people, the problem is not that they ate rice. The problem is how fast that rice became blood sugar. Jasmine seed changes that speed. It makes the meal metabolically less aggressive. It also appears to help improve glucose uptake in tissues. So once glucose is in the blood, the body becomes somewhat more effective at moving it where it belongs, rather than leaving it circulating too long. That is why some people feel less post-meal heaviness, less sleepiness, less fog after meals when they use it consistently. The meal does not stop being food. It stops being such a metabolic ambush. And there is another reason I like jamun seed. It helps protect the pancreas against oxidative stress. That matters because high blood sugar is not just a sugar problem. It is also a free radical problem, a cellular damage problem. And the beta cells of the pancreas are especially vulnerable. So now you have one ingredient helping before absorption, during the glucose rise, and in the protective environment around the pancreas itself. That is useful. The simplest way to use it is half a teaspoon in warm water after your main meal. Again, not as a stunt, as a habit. Now ingredient number 4, cinnamon. And I know the second I say cinnamon, some people mentally step back because they think they have already heard everything there is to hear about it. Stay with me. Because most people have heard the headline without understanding the mechanism. Cinnamon is not useful because it is warming or traditional, or because someone once put it in a wellness article beside a smiling stock photo. It is useful because it helps improve insulin signaling. That is where the real story is. Remember what I told you earlier. In insulin resistance, the signal is still being sent, but the cells are no longer listening properly. Cinnamon helps improve that conversation. It supports the insulin receptor system so that your cells respond more effectively, which means glucose leaves the bloodstream more efficiently. Now combine that with another effect. Cinnamon also helps reduce excessive glucose output from the liver. That matters a great deal for people whose fasting sugar is starting to creep up, because fasting blood sugar is not only about what you ate the night before, it is also about what your liver is doing while you are not eating. And in insulin resistance, the liver often becomes overgenerous with glucose. It releases too much. Cinnamon helps calm that, so it becomes useful both after meals and between meals. That is rare. I once spoke with a woman in her early 70s who thought her sugar problem was only desserts, but her worst readings were often first thing in the morning before breakfast. She was shocked to learn the liver had so much to do with it. When she began using Ceylon cinnamon consistently, the first number that improved was not her post-lunch reading. It was her fasting sugar. That is why understanding the mechanism matters. It tells you where to look for change. Now, an important detail. If you are going to use cinnamon regularly, choose Ceylon cinnamon rather than cassia. That matters for long-term safety. And keep the dose modest. About a quarter teaspoon daily is enough to make it useful. This is not one of those ingredients where more and more automatically means better and better. A little, used daily, matters more than a lot used occasionally. Now, ingredient number 3, bitter melon. This is where the list stops being gentle and starts getting serious. Because bitter melon does something that makes researchers pay close attention. It works from multiple angles that resemble insulin support. And I know many people do not want to hear that because they do not enjoy bitter melon. That is fine. Your taste buds are entitled to their opinion. Your pancreas may have a different one. Bitter melon contains compounds that support glucose handling at the liver, the pancreas, and the cell level. That is unusual. It helps the body move glucose into storage more effectively. It appears to support insulin-like activity, and it also slows some of the digestive enzyme activity that makes starch hit too fast in the first place. So it works before the spike and during the body's attempt to manage the spike. That is why it ranks this high. It is not just helping one weak point in the system. It is helping several. Now let me be honest. Bitter melon is not charming. It is not comforting. It is not the ingredient people get excited about serving to guests. But bitterness is often part of what makes a plant metabolically powerful. Not everything useful is pleasant. Some things are simply effective. If someone can tolerate 2 to 3 ounces of fresh bitter melon juice before lunch 2 or 3 times a week, it can be a meaningful intervention. Not because juice is trendy, because the compounds remain intact and direct. If the taste is overwhelming, a little lemon or ginger helps. But do not bury it in sweetness and then pretend you preserve the benefit. That defeats the point. I once heard someone say, "I hate bitter melon, but I hate feeling dead after lunch more." That is the kind of honesty that gets results. Now, ingredient number 2, amla, also called Indian gooseberry. This is one of the most underestimated foods in this entire conversation. And if you have never used it, you are not alone. Amla matters because it helps the system in a way many people completely overlook. It supports insulin function by improving the metabolic environment around it. One of the key reasons is chromium. Chromium helps insulin do its job more smoothly. If insulin is the key, chromium helps the lock work better. That is the easiest way to think about it. Without enough support around that receptor system, the key can turn and the door still barely opens. Amla helps the system respond more intelligently. But that is only part of the story. Amla is also extraordinarily rich in vitamin C and protective plant compounds. That matters because the pancreas does not only need glucose control, it needs protection. The beta cells are vulnerable. They are constantly exposed to oxidative stress in a body struggling with unstable glucose. Amla helps defend them. And there is a third reason I rank it this high. It supports liver health and helps reduce the metabolic burden of fat accumulation in the liver. That matters because fatty liver is one of the most common hidden drivers of insulin resistance in adults over 40. People often think liver fat is some separate issue. Very often it is not. It is tied directly to the same metabolic story. So now you have one food helping insulin signaling, helping pancreatic protection, and helping the liver itself. That is not small. That is leverage. One fresh amla daily, or 1 to 2 tablespoons of fresh amla juice on an empty stomach, is enough to make it useful. And now we come to ingredient number 1, curry leaves. And I know some people are surprised. They expected a rare imported powder with a long name and an even longer invoice, not curry leaves. That is exactly why curry leaves deserve this spot. They are ordinary enough to be ignored, powerful enough not to be. Curry leaves help improve insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. That is the biggest reason they rank number 1. Because if the cells listen better, everything else works better. Glucose moves more smoothly out of the bloodstream. The pancreas does not have to shout as loudly. The whole system calms down. But curry leaves do not stop there. They are rich in antioxidant compounds that help protect the beta cells of the pancreas. That means they are not just helping the signal, they are helping protect the factory that makes the signal possible. And then there is another layer. Curry leaves also appear to slow some carbohydrate breakdown and reduce fat accumulation in the liver. That matters because once the liver becomes metabolically congested, insulin resistance spreads faster and the entire system becomes harder to control. This is why I call curry leaves a force multiplier. They do not just help in one place, they make the rest of the system work better. And here is the part I love most about them. Many people already have access to them. They have seen them, cooked with them, picked them out of food, ignored them, never realizing they were throwing away one of the most valuable metabolic tools in the kitchen. That is why curry leaves deserve number 1, not because they are glamorous, because they are useful, accessible, affordable, and powerful. The simplest way to use them. Chew 5 to 7 fresh curry leaves on an empty stomach in the morning. Then keep using them generously in cooking, not once in a while, regularly. Now let's bring all 6 together in a practical daily rhythm. Morning, chew your curry leaves first, then take your soaked fenugreek water and softened fenugreek seeds. If you are using amla juice, morning is also an excellent time for that. Before lunch, if bitter melon is part of your routine, use the juice then. After your main meal, take black plum seed powder in warm water. At some point during the day, use your Ceylon cinnamon consistently in tea, warm water, or food. That is it. 6 ingredients, 3 moments in the day. Nothing exotic, nothing financially absurd, no expensive supplement stack designed to make your wallet lighter while your blood sugar stays the same. Now here is the most important thing I can tell you. Do not expect drama in the first week. This is where people fail. The same way damage built quietly, protection also works quietly. You will not feel your pancreas healing on Tuesday. You will not feel your cells becoming more insulin sensitive by Thursday afternoon. What you may feel first are smaller things, less crashing after meals, less desperate hunger, less heaviness, less fog, less urgent need for something sweet. Then, over time, better numbers, better fasting glucose, better post-meal control, better energy. That is how the body repairs. Quietly, the same way it used to decline quietly. That is why consistency is not just helpful here. Consistency is the mechanism. Every small step you repeat daily protects your pancreas, your blood vessels, your nerves, and your kidneys from tomorrow's damage. So let me leave you with this. The disease people call diabetes is often not one event. It is years of tiny repeated metabolic injuries finally becoming visible enough to name. And if that is true, then healing does not begin with one giant dramatic act. It begins with repeated protection, repeated slowing, repeated support, repeated daily choices that make each meal less destructive than the last one. So remember the ranking. Number 6, fenugreek seeds. Number 5, black plum seed powder. Number 4, cinnamon. Number 3, bitter melon. Number 2, amla. Number 1, curry leaves. And if you do nothing else after this, do one thing. Stop asking only, what should I stop eating? Start asking the better question. What can I start adding that changes what my food does inside my body? That is the question that changes the story, not just your plate, your future.